Good evening, everyone. My name is Geraldine Ducati. I am the director of the Newell D. Goff Center for Education and Public Programs here at the Rhode Island Historical Society. I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight, and I hope you are enjoying your basket of goodies and flowers, but hold off on trying the chocolate. We have a calendar of informational and educational programs shaping up this year, along with some exclusive and fun events like this one. This event sold out fairly quickly, so be sure to join our mailing list and become a member if you aren't one already, to be the first to hear about upcoming events. I am thrilled to introduce our guest tonight, Dave Borghesani, the executive chocolate historian for Mars Wrigley. He will take us on a journey through the history of chocolate and show us how to properly taste each piece, even the ones you thought you were familiar with. Dave has enjoyed a career of 34 years with Mars, serving in both internal sales support and field sales roles. Dave has worked very closely with the American Heritage Chocolate Team for over 5 years, researching and telling the story of chocolate and the role that it has played in the history of societies for over 3,500 years. Dave has spoken to groups at historic sites such as Colonial Williamsburg, Monticello, the Smithsonian Institute for American History, the National Archives, the Betsy Ross House, and more, tracing how chocolate made its way from the Amazon to households of pre-colonial era Americans. American Heritage Chocolate is based on recipes from colonial America that allows people to taste and experience chocolate as it was enjoyed by our founding fathers. Gather your chocolates and a glass of water and join us on this chocolate journey with Dave Borghesani.
Thank you, Geraldine. It's a pleasure to be here. But before we get started, I want to make sure that you all have the tools to do a proper tasting. So many of you have purchased the chocolate tasting kits, which you will need along with some water to clean your palate before you taste each sample. So please take the time to gather everything prior to us starting. And don't worry, even if you don't have a tasting kit, we have lots of sweet history to share with you.
Also, be sure to share your questions throughout the presentation, and we will get back to you and answer as many as we can.
So get ready to enjoy a special event where we will be tasting 5 pieces of delicious chocolate that will guide us as we learn history, as we taste history. I'll explain the evolution of chocolate making starting over 3,500 years ago, and we will travel through time into the 21st century and modern chocolate making techniques. We will see how machinery that was created during the early 19th century helped to propel chocolate making into what we recognize today as chocolate. I will take you on a journey back at the technology then and see how the manufacturing of chocolate has evolved today. Now, you may be surprised to learn that the basic process for making chocolate hasn't really changed that much over the centuries. You will see how we make some of your favorite chocolate treats. But remember, making chocolate all starts with one basic ingredient, the cocoa bean. The origins of chocolate date back over 3,500 years ago to the Amazon rainforest. Some of the first people to enjoy chocolate were the early native tribes like the Olmecs, Maya, Toltecs, and the Aztecs. While we don't know what made them decide to make chocolate, it's believed that the beans may have been thrown near a fire, causing the beans to roast, producing an enticing, toasted, dark roasted chocolate aroma that prompted them to purposely roast the beans. They ground the roasted cocoa beans into a paste on heated stones called patates, adding spices to flavor their chocolate. They would let this chocolate paste solidify and sell it in blocks that were grated into powder and dissolved in warm water, producing a chocolate drink. Did you know that up until the 1850s, people drank chocolate instead of eating it? Now, if anyone has ever eaten a cocoa bean straight from the pod, you know that it's extremely bitter. Processing the beans by fermentation, drying, and roasting only improves the flavor so much. So, people experimented with spices that were available to them. In the Mesoamerican region, which is in modern day Mexico and Central America, spices such as red pepper, annatto, and vanilla bean would have been added to the chocolate. People started adding sweeteners like honey and agave to the chocolate. Now, by the 1500s, chocolate arrived in Europe, and by the early 1600s, spread throughout. In Europe, they added other spices that they liked, such as nutmeg, cinnamon, anise, and orange. Now, a lot of people ask me when they started adding sugar to chocolate. Well, sugar was already being used in Europe since the 1200s and was quickly added to chocolate. When sugar started being farmed in the Caribbean in the 1500s, it made its way to North America pretty quickly. Now, we're going to try our first sample, which is American Heritage chocolate. American Heritage is based upon recipes from the 18th century, giving us an idea of what chocolate would have tasted like back then. So, how do we do a proper tasting? So I'm going to explain to you the proper way to do it. So here is the proper way to sample your delicious chocolate. And we recommend that you always have water to clean your palate prior to eating each sample. So first, you're going to want to smell the aroma of the chocolate. So you'll take your piece of chocolate and lightly rub the chocolate to release the different aromas of the chocolate. Now, if you're like me, for years, I could just about get the wrapper off the chocolate before I put it in my mouth. But if you do that, you're missing a fantastic experience. So you want to hold the chocolate up to your nose and inhale a couple of times. Then you're going to take a small bite of the chocolate and allow the chocolate to dissolve on your tongue. Now, I recommend that you let it dissolve on your tongue for maybe 30 seconds or more. It should cover your tongue so that all the flavors are picked up by your taste buds. You'll also want to notice the texture of the chocolate. Then finally, you're going to take your chocolate and, of course, swallow it and enjoy what's called the finish to the chocolate. You should be able to identify different flavors and textures to the different chocolates that we're going to sample. See if you can detect different flavors, things like dairy, spices, fruity, nutty, roasted and toasted. Tonight, you should have 5 uniquely different experiences. And always remember to clean your palate with water prior to sampling the next piece. So, Geraldine, are you ready to begin? Let's start. As I mentioned, the first brand that you're going to sample is American Heritage Chocolate. We're going to ask you about the flavors you are tasting and encourage you to share them in the comments. So please pay attention to the different flavors you experience. So Geraldine and I will demonstrate the steps, and you should follow along with me as we sample our first piece. Again, as Geraldine showed you, here's your American Heritage chocolate. So get it out. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Dave.
Okay. So as I said, remember, take a sip of your water, clean your palate, and let's follow these steps. So Geraldine, let's do it. Let's lightly rub the chocolate with our finger. And again, what you're doing is you're actually letting it melt just a little bit. And again, it's releasing those wonderful aromas within the chocolate. Now, remember, you're going to take a little smell of the chocolate. This activates your sense of smell. So again, in tasting, you really want to have all of your senses going. One of the most important ones is your sense of smell. Then take a bite and let it melt in your mouth. Now, the important thing to remember when you're taking a bite of chocolate is you let it melt and let it cover your entire tongue, because your taste buds are all over your tongue and they're going to pick up different flavors. And again, after about 30 seconds, we're going to give you some time right now, then you can swallow the chocolate and enjoy the flavors. So let's take a second. Now, Geraldine and I have been practicing, so we're enjoying chocolate. And I don't think it ever gets old, Geraldine. Has it ever gotten old for you to try some chocolate?
Definitely not.
Good. So hopefully this will even make you want to try some more than you've ever done before and maybe experience some different flavors with different chocolates. Okay, Geraldine, let me ask you a question. Now that you've had a chance to try your chocolate, what was the first flavor that you tasted as you bit into your American Heritage chocolate?
I taste orange, Dave.
Very good. So We'd love to hear from all of you too out there. So why don't you go ahead and put your comments, different flavor or flavors that you tasted in the chat. And also, was it sweet? Was it spicy? Was it citrus or nutty? Or was it something else? So we're going to take a minute here to let you go ahead and write in the chat some of the different flavors that you're tasting too, and what stuck out to you first.
I see
And
some responses, Dave.
well, that's good. Please share them,
I
Gerald.
see people are sharing orange, like cinnamon, clove, dairy. Someone also said clove and pepper, red pepper, someone said.
Good. Excellent. Good. So you may be unfamiliar with American Heritage chocolate. So let me tell you a little bit about it. It's a chocolate that was based upon recipes from the 1750s. It's a semi-sweet chocolate flavored with spices. So you will notice that there are a variety of different flavors that are produced by adding spices to chocolate. In American Heritage, there are 6 spices that have been added to the chocolate. See if these resonate with any of you. Cinnamon, anise, nutmeg, orange, red pepper, and vanilla. There's also some salt and some sugar that's been added to the chocolate. Now, you probably will not taste all of them. And different people are going to pick up different spices. Geraldine, some people have actually said that they taste flavors like banana or cherries, but neither of them are in the American Heritage chocolate. That's just the result of how your taste buds process the different flavors. Now, I mentioned that this is a semi-sweet chocolate versus a milk chocolate, which has dairy, or a baking chocolate, which contains no sugar. So if you're wondering what semi-sweet means, it is chocolate made with cocoa powder, cocoa butter, and sugar. Now, Geraldine, I've had the pleasure of traveling the country and doing a lot of different tastings and demonstrations on our chocolate. And one of the questions I often get is, why did we go from drinking chocolate to eating chocolate? So the answer to that question is because innovation was a natural part of the human condition. So it was new, it was innovative. People had certainly eaten solid pieces of chocolate, but it was not enjoyable and kind of hard, like a little brick. So this is something, a hard piece of chocolate that you might have broken a tooth on. In the early 1800s, the Industrial Revolution was happening globally, and chocolate was not exempt from the impact of the innovation that came from the Industrial Revolution. Chocolate makers began making machines like the cocoa press that allowed them to change the density of chocolate so that it could be eaten just like we enjoy our chocolate today. So why did we want to eat chocolate instead of drinking it? Well, chocolate was growing in popularity, and chocolate makers wanted to find ways for people to enjoy it more frequently. Even then, they were looking for ways to get people to enjoy more chocolate. Now, remember earlier, I said that chocolate was made into a solid block that had to be grated and it was dissolved in water. So if you tried to eat a solid block of chocolate, you couldn't bite into it like you would a Snickers bar. In order to make it easy to eat, it had to get softened. So in comes the cocoa press. Removing some of the cocoa butter allowed for a softer, more edible block of chocolate that didn't have to be grated, but could be eaten. That is exactly what Dutch chocolate maker Conrad van Houten did in 1828. He invented a machine called the cocoa press that applied pressure, literally squeezing out the cocoa butter from the beans. Well, what did it accomplish? Squeezed out the cocoa butter from the beans, leaving a solid cake of cocoa powder. Before this machine was invented, a chocolate maker would have used a manual press, which was very time consuming and took a great deal of effort. Now, large batches of beans could be processed quickly and efficiently, leading to larger scale chocolate production. So, what difference did this make for chocolate makers? This made it possible to create a piece of solid chocolate that was soft enough to eat, but it wasn't the same type of chocolate like we have today, like a Three Musketeers bar. Hey, Geraldine, I'll bet you didn't know that chocolate was one of the only foods that changed from a beverage to a solid.
I did
So,
not.
so when was this first chocolate bar produced, Geraldine? It was produced in 1847. English chocolate maker Joseph Fry and Sons blended cocoa solids, cocoa butter, and sugar to make the first solid chocolate bar that was mass produced in England. It was literally called chocolate delicious to eat. It seemed that people enjoyed eating chocolate, and the company began making other solid chocolate items. However, the chocolate they created had what we would perceive today as a gritty texture. Now, while Fry was making solid chocolate in England, the Swiss were developing something revolutionary. Chocolate makers had tried to add milk to chocolate with no success. In 1867, Swiss chocolate maker Henri Nestle developed a process for condensing milk. Another Swiss
Mm.
chocolate maker and friend of Nestle's, Daniel Peter, successfully added the condensed milk with his dark chocolate. And in 1876, he created the first milk chocolate bar. Okay, Geraldine, I think it's time. We need some chocolate, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. So the next brand that we're going to sample, everybody, is our Dove milk chocolate. So go ahead and gather your Dove milk chocolate. Now remember, clean your palate. And now that you're becoming experienced chocolate tasters, I'm going to leave some of this up to all of you out there. Smell the aroma of the chocolate after you rub it gently, releasing some of those aromas from the chocolate. Remember, mmm. Now, some of you might not have had your evening meal yet. This ought to get you going for an evening meal, don't you think, Geraldine?
Well, you don't want to spoil your dinner.
Oh, we won't. We're just going to get it ready. So, okay, we're going to take a little bite, and remember, let it melt on your tongue. Mm. Now, as you bite into this sample, you might have noticed a snap. I'm going to explain how chocolate gets its snap in just a few minutes. So stay tuned. You'll notice that adding milk makes a nice, sweet, and creamy flavor in the chocolate. So tell us in the chat, what other flavors are you tasting? Hey, we want to hear from you. What are the different things you're experiencing? And so after we get some responses in there, Geraldine, we'll have you maybe read some and find out what people are saying. And again, you should have different experiences than you had. So let's hear what you've got to say.
So, Dave, while we're waiting for those responses, somebody asked a question back
Sure.
to when chocolate drink was more the common. Um, was it hot? Somebody's asking.
That's a great question. So, yeah, as best we can tell, again, the chocolate, because it's real chocolate, has to be dissolved. So the water, which was primarily used in mixing the drink, would have had to have been warm enough to melt the chocolate. So traditionally, it was melted in warm water. It could have been reduced
Mm.
down to room temperature, but most likely would not have been served cold. So yes, it would have been a warm beverage that, here, Geraldine, here's a fun fact, might have been often served in things like taverns or pubs where people
Mhm.
would gather. They could have had a coffee, a tea, or how about a delicious cup of warm chocolate.
I did know that one, Dave.
Excellent.
All right, so we have some flavors in the chat. People are tasting caramel, lots of caramel.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's saying it's way, way softer than the first one, more dairy, vanilla, milk and vanilla, vanilla, butterscotch, and vanilla and
Mm.
dairy.
Wonderful. Those are great. So thank you everybody for sharing. Yeah, if you haven't shared yet, I just want to encourage everybody, just call it out there. Tell us what you're perceiving. What are you tasting? It's interesting. The butterscotch is great because there is no butterscotch. But again, like we said before about bananas and cherries, it's the way your taste buds are processing the flavors. And you're right. If anybody's noticing a difference in the texture and you're noticing it was different than American Heritage, has a lot to do with the fact that milk is in the product, which makes it creamier. Geraldine, here's a fun fact. All chocolate starts off as dark chocolate. It becomes milk chocolate when you add a high percentage of milk to that chocolate. So you just enjoyed a silky smooth piece of delicious Dove milk chocolate. If you were eating milk chocolate in the 1870s, the milk would have made the chocolate smoother, but it would still have been gritty. Enter the conching process. Swiss chocolate maker Rudolf Lindt developed a process in 1878 called conching. Conching got its name because the original design for the inside of the machine resembled a conch shell. By moving the chocolate back and forth in the conch, two things happened. First, the motion created by the stone roller aerated the chocolate, which enhanced the flavor. Second, the agitation changed the consistency of the chocolate from a thick paste to a smooth liquid that could be poured into molds. Now, Lindt's original conch only produced a few gallons of chocolate at a time, compared with modern conches that can now produce several tons of chocolate in a matter of hours. Now, have you ever eaten a piece of chocolate that didn't look good? Maybe it had a dull finish or it was discolored. For most chocolates today, that's not the case. Although Lindt was successful in creating a smooth texture with the invention of the conch, it didn't really look that delicious. One of the issues that plagued chocolate makers back then, and even still sometimes today, was something called bloom. Bloom is when white spots appear on the surface of the chocolate. Now, those white spots are cocoa butter that has risen to the surface. Today, that usually happens when you leave some chocolate in the sunlight or in your car on a warm day, and it melts, and then it cools again. That's called bloom. So bloom doesn't drastically change the flavor, and it can be eaten. It just doesn't look so good. So back then in the 1890s, all chocolate bloomed because there was nothing to prevent it. Swiss chocolate maker Jean Tobler solved the problem by developing a process called tempering. Tempering raises and lowers the temperature of the chocolate, creating a beautiful shine on the chocolate. Now, remember when I mentioned the snap when you bite into it? That's the result of tempering. Around 1900, innovation in candy making drove chocolate makers to look for new candies. One example is the process of enrobing chocolate. For years, if you wanted to eat a chocolate-covered nut or a piece of fruit, it had to be hand-dipped into chocolate. So that's easy for small artisanal chocolate businesses, but it didn't lend to mass producing. The enrobing machine was invented in France in 1903. Imagine whatever you're trying to cover in chocolate could be moved on a conveyor belt and is covered on top and bottom with a curtain of chocolate. This revolutionized chocolate bars and made way for mass production of chocolate-covered filled treats. Around the same time as enrobing was being launched, a new chocolate company was emerging. In 1911, Frank and Ethel Mars began making buttercream candy in the kitchen of their Tacoma, Washington home. A few years later, they moved to Minneapolis and opened a small candy factory called Nougat House. Changing the name in 1922 to Marlborough, the company began producing its first chocolate candy. The first success came in 1923 when the Milky Way bar was introduced. The bar consists of malted nougat, caramel, and is enrobed in milk chocolate. Hey, Geraldine, I think that's our cue for our third sample tonight. That's right. So everybody, grab your Milky Way bar. Now, Gerald, what's the first thing we need to do?
Cleanse our palate with water.
Let's all do it. Let's cleanse our palate. Now, after you get your chocolate open, do the same thing. Remember, go ahead and just gently rub the surface. Just release those different flavors, those different aromas. You should be smelling something totally different than you've done in the previous two samples.
Very different.
Now, go ahead and take a bite. I'd like to know if anybody out there is eating their whole sample or if anybody's is pacing themselves. I got a funny feeling there's going to be 5 wrappers left at most households tonight. So remember, let that chocolate dissolve all across your tongue and complete it by swallowing the chocolate. And while you're doing that, please tell us in the chat what you are tasting. So we'll give you a few seconds to do that. Now, Gerald, I don't know what bar you would go to, but I'll tell you, Milky Way has been one of my favorite candy bars for a long time. And a true story, Gerald. When I first started with Mars Wrigley a long time ago, the very first Mars Wrigley product I had was a Milky Way bar. I've loved them ever since, too.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So Dave, someone has a question. I don't know if you know the answer of this. Why did the Mars couple get involved in making chocolate? Was it a popular pastime for that time period?
It's a great question, too. So actually, Frank Mars, his mother actually started making candies, and he loved making candies with his mother. So he decided that he wanted to make candies too. So he and his wife, Ethel, started making their buttercreams together. So the family tradition actually began a little before that. Now,
So it looks like some people missed getting a Milky Way bar. So I'm really sorry about that. We'll have to make that right. But some people did. So we have caramel, we have nougat and caramel, malt, salt. The chocolate itself is more bitter than the Dove that we tasted. Someone's saying caramel. And someone is suggesting if you missed your Milky Way bar, that this is a good time to have a sip of your wine that was included in the basket.
Very good. That's good. And you know what, Geraldine? It's interesting because you and I have talked a little bit about this too. Does it matter which kind of wine you serve with which chocolate? And certainly some wines are going to enhance the flavor of the chocolate a little bit more too. But again, it doesn't really matter. It depends on what you like too and what you would prefer to have. But you'll notice really a fantastic flavor enhancement going on when you're eating your different chocolates with a wine pairing. So is anybody also noticing the very smooth texture when you bite into the chocolate? So as you bite through the enrobed part of the chocolate, and then notice the change in texture from the bite, which is very smooth. Then you experience this chewy texture, the caramel and the nougat. And also, it sounds like some of you already noticed this, the flavor notes are different than the Dove milk chocolate. So you may have picked up on some of those prominent milky, buttery, caramel, and sweet notes. So again, think about enrobing. Enrobing further allows chocolate makers to create different textures depending on what is in the center. Now, Geraldine, the Milky Way bar was the first bar created by Frank and Ethel Mars in 1923. Manufactured in their facility in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Milky Way bar became the first mass-produced filled chocolate bar. Although many believe it was named after the astrological galaxy, it was actually named for the then popular dessert, the Milky Way malted milkshake. Following the Milky Way bar, the Snickers bar, named for one of the family's favorite horses, was launched in 1930, followed in 1932 by the Three Musketeers bar and the Mars bar. Now, for those of you who are Mars almond bar lovers and thought maybe Mars discontinued it, in 2002, the original Mars almond bar was renamed Snickers almond bar and is available at your grocery store or many other retailers, as well as being online. So, during the 1930s, the Nestle company developed a new flavor of chocolate, white chocolate. Now, while there is no definitive reason for the development of white chocolate, one theory is that it was a way to use up excess milk powder and cocoa butter that had been produced for World War I. If you remember, we spoke about how the cocoa press pressed out the cocoa butter and then blended it back into the cocoa solids to make chocolate. In white chocolate, the pressed out cocoa butter is mixed with sugar and vanilla without adding any cocoa powder. otherwise known as cocoa solids. So get ready to taste some white chocolate. We're going to go ahead and grab our FLM white chocolate coin from your kit. And remember, rinse your palate.
But before we taste it, we want to ask you all a question. True or false? Do you believe white chocolate is real chocolate?
So go ahead and type that in the chat, right? So now when you take a bite of the white chocolate, you may have noticed some similarities, right, Gerald? You showed the coin. These are very pretty coins. Notice the similarities with the texture of the FLM white chocolate and the Dove chocolate. You may also experience sweeter flavor with prominent vanilla flavors that taste a little bit like vanilla pudding. So let's go ahead and give it a try.
Hey, Dave, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Which candy bar is the most popular one today of Mars?
So another really good, well thought out question. So M&M's is our largest brand, but again, for a bar, it would be the Snickers bar. And Snickers bar is fantastic because we're doing a lot of innovation with Snickers as a brand. So when you go to your local retail, you might see some different flavors and some different formats to the Snickers bar. So new ways to enjoy Snickers at home.
All right, Dave. So I have some answers for that true or false question here.
Geraldine, can I eat some more of my coin? Is it okay?
Oh, sure. Go on. So I see no's and falses and yeses and nopes and no thank you. And someone says there's no smell to it. It's an imposter. And someone says my husband already ate all the white chocolate.
So there's a yes for white chocolate. Yeah, so that's really good. Yeah, it's so funny because, Geraldine, as you know too. So, for many hardcore chocolate lovers, the term white chocolate is not accepted, right? So many people do not accept the idea of chocolate that is white because they believe that removing the cocoa solids or cocoa powder, it's the stuff that makes chocolate brown, means that it can't be called chocolate. For many years, white chocolate was classified as confectionery, but not as chocolate. In the US, this issue of the classification of white chocolate actually went to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and in 2002, it published a final rule that established a standard of identity for white chocolate. Based on the ruling, in order to be marketed as white chocolate, a product must contain at least 20% cocoa butter, at least 14% total milk solids, and at least 3.5% milk fat. So, not getting full yet, are you, Geraldine?
Nope.
No way. So do we have any other questions in there right now? How are we looking?
Does Mars own FLM?
Yes, we do. So FLM is part of Mars Wrigley. And if you are interested, you can go to flm.com and learn more about the FLM chocolate candy facility out in Henderson, Nevada. And if you ever are either out there or passing through there or going there, I would encourage you to stop by. They have a fantastic cactus garden with over 600 species of cactus open to the public. And you can actually go into FLM and see them actually making chocolate right there in the facility.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I see some folks are saying that the Snickers commercials are the funniest on TV.
Wonderful.
The white chocolate's not very chocolatey. And they're tasting vanilla and cream and a very sweet flavor with that.
Good. And that's what you should taste too, right? So again, remember when we talked about the Dove sample, we talked about tasting roasted and toasted flavor notes. Obviously, that comes from the cocoa powder. So again, if you were going to eat just a baker's chocolate or something like that, you're going to get a lot of roasted, toasted, and no sweet. right? So you get just an opposite effect when you're eating the white chocolate. And we do a lot of different things with white chocolate. So you might see some different products that are out there, especially from the M&M's brand, especially around seasons where we actually have different white chocolate offerings.
Oh.
So there are people that do enjoy it. So especially the person at home who's already eaten the white chocolate. So thank you for that. Okay, now it's time for our final sample, Geraldine. And what a journey we've already taken. So, but there's even more innovation in candy making. The process that is used in creating M&M's chocolate candies is called panning. Picture a small portable cement mixer. That's kind of what a pan looks like. It's a round pan on an axle that turns, allowing centers to be coated with colored sugar. The constant rotation forms a smooth surface while evenly coating the individual pieces of the chocolate. The final step in creating the product is to apply a sugar coat, forming a protective layer on the candy. Centers like peanuts can also be panned by spraying a fine coat of chocolate on the centers. The same principle of candy tumbling in the pan produces an even coating of chocolate on the center. Now, you may know that chocolate has been enjoyed by American soldiers in every war in which America has fought, going back to the French and Indian War in 1754. The way that soldiers enjoy chocolate changed as manufacturing advanced, and soldiers went from drinking chocolate to eating chocolate. As chocolate became more portable, it became more of a treat for soldiers versus a source of sustenance. Innovation resulted in chocolate that could withstand higher temperatures. During the Spanish Civil War, 1936-1939, Forrest E. Mars Sr., the son of Mars Incorporated founder Frank C. Mars, observed soldiers eating small pieces of chocolate coated with hard sugar shell. He brought the idea home with the intent of creating a similar confection. He partnered with Bruce Murray, son of Hershey president William Murray, and developed what is known today as the M&M's chocolate candies. M&M's milk chocolate candies made their debut in 1940 and were packaged in a cardboard tube and packed in soldiers' food rations. Now, the original colors were brown, red, orange, yellow, green, and violet. At the end of the war in 1945, service personnel wanted to continue enjoying M&M's milk chocolate candies. Mars immediately began making M&M's milk chocolate candies for people everywhere in the U.S. Now we're going to take a second, Geraldine. For those M&M peanut candy lovers, you know when they first launched in the market. Go ahead, place your guess in the chat. See if you know. And again, you notice here, Geraldine, I don't buy the little bag. I buy the big bag.
Yes.
I like M&M's peanut chocolate candies.
Well, Dave, while we're waiting for some answers, there is another question.
Yes.
How does Mars test new flavors or candy bars?
Wow, that is a very big question. So again, we do have a team of marketers. We do have different product scientists. We do a lot of research and design on different products. And again, we also look for what people are enjoying out in the marketplace, what they want to taste, what they enjoy. And we also try to appeal to a wide variety of different consumers. So we don't just target towards one. And Snickers, the Snickers bar is a good example of that. M&M's is another good example of that as well too. And just very recently, Mars has acquired Kind Bar and Nature's Bakery. So appealing to a very different type of consumer as well too, to meet different consumer needs. But I'll also tell you that before we launch anything, it goes through rigorous testing and tasting to make sure that we've developed just the right product for most consumers out there.
Great, Dave. We have some guesses for those peanut M&Ms. We have 1955, 1972, 1966, 1951, 1950s, and 1963.
Well, the good news is I don't think anybody Googled it, so I'm impressed by that. Thank you.
I think the last person may have Googled it because they came in a little late and they're right on the money.
Okay. So what was that? What was that guess,
The
Geraldine?
very last one, 1954. It just came in while you were talking.
Okay, well, it took a little while to get to the Google functionality, but let's not hold them to that. They might have known. They might have been such
Okay,
super
okay.
fans. We're gonna assume that they knew because they're big fans of it. But you're exactly right. 1954. So the next brand you're going to be sampling is M&M's milk chocolate candies. So go ahead and get your M&M's milk chocolate candies. So get ready to taste some panned candies. So grab the M&M's milk chocolate candies from your kit, and as Geraldine just demonstrated, remember to rinse your palate. Hey, Geraldine, I don't think we need to lead them through all the steps. I think everybody knows what to do, don't you?
But I want some.
it
That's all
doesn't
right.
mean you. It doesn't mean you can't sample them, Geraldine. You can go ahead and do that
Okay.
too. You just don't have to explain it. Now, while Geraldine is tasting her M&M's milk chocolate candies, I want you to remember to contrast the crunch of the sugar shell, followed by the smooth texture of the chocolate inside. And while you're enjoying M&M's milk chocolate candies, you might notice that the texture is crunchier than the Dove chocolate,
Mm.
and that's because the crunch is caused by the sugar shell and the size of each candy. So as you're tasting that, tell us what you're tasting. Put that in the chat. Let's see what you're coming up with on that as well too. And by the way, while you're doing that, Geraldine, here's something. Geraldine and I have already shared this, by the way, everybody. So we
Mm.
want you to feel free to share too. Does anybody have a favorite M&M's chocolate candy story from your childhood or something that you remember? Maybe your favorite color of M&M's, your favorite M&M's character, maybe your first memory of M&M's chocolate candy. Hey, Geraldine, do you want to share anything that you remember about M&M's chocolate candies?
Oh, sure, Dave. So I'm a child of the 80s, and I remember the tan M&M. So the colors at the time were brown, tan, yellow, green, and orange. There was no red or blue. I don't remember when the special holiday colors came out, but I do remember that at some point in my childhood, we always had a candy dish of either regular or peanut M&Ms out for whatever holiday it was in those special holiday colors. So like pastels around Easter and green and that's when we had the red there, but not in the regular M&Ms for around Christmas time.
So, Geraldine, one of the things that you alluded to was when did we start selling holiday M&Ms, which actually were launched and called holidays back then.
Mm.
It was in 1986 for Christmas we introduced the first red and green M&Ms, and they only came, as you mentioned, in milk chocolate or in peanut too. Since then, as you know, and hopefully a lot of other folks know, we've expanded. We make all kinds of different colors for different occasions, and even not even in the traditional seasons of Halloween, Christmas, Valentine's, and Easter. Hey, Geraldine, I got a fun one to share too. So, one of the things that I do is I take all of my M&Ms and I eat one color at a time. And I'd love to know if people watching do something quirky like that
You
too.
sort them?
I sort them and I eat one color at a time. And the last two colors I eat are always orange and blue. So if anybody does something, I don't want to say quirky, it's just something that you do. We'd love to hear about that as well too.
So we do have some stories. Christopher Moore, on a family trip to Vegas when I was a kid, we went to the big M&M store museum there. That must be the one you were just talking about, Dave.
Yes.
It was really fun. I remember getting a wax mold of my hand, and we got to choose from the M&M colors for it.
Wow.
Interesting. Do you still have that?
Mm.
Someone's remembering the melt in your mouth, not in your hands jingle.
Yeah.
Someone remembers getting a green M&M character as an ornament as a stocking stuffer. Someone always had plain and peanut M&Ms out as a party spread, and people are mentioning stocking stuffers. My dad always had them as a treat for my daughter. She called them eggs. Someone's went to the M&M store in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And Morgan Graff is saying, I wasn't a child, but when I was in grad school, my best friend and I would buy one bag of regular and one bag of peanut when we would go to the laundromat as our treat. Someone's remembering tan, and they liked it because they felt it was the least popular and it deserved love. That's very nice.
We should take that back to the M&M's team too, so they might have some interest in knowing that information too. So that's fun. Yeah, you mentioned M&M's World, and we have M&M's World in Times Square in New York City, as well as on the Strip in Las Vegas, and we're just getting ready to open a new store down in Disney Springs in Orlando as well too. And if anybody ever has a chance to go there, you will be amazed at the beauty you can see when you see a whole spectrum of the different colors of M&Ms that we have available. And we also have some unique flavors sometimes when you go to M&M's World. So good. Any other stories to share, Geraldine?
Well, I was thinking when you were talking about sorting, I think we did that in a math class and made like bar charts out of like how many colors were in in the package. Let's see. My dad always ate all the colors first and saved the brown ones for last, claimed the brown ones were more chocolatey. Christopher is saying he does still have that wax hand.
Wow,
That's
very
good to
good.
know. Well, it's at his parents' house somewhere. He'll have to look for it next time he visits, and bring it in to show us. Um, Someone makes cookies with them.
What kind of cookies do you make? Can they share with us that too? I'd be interested to know. And by the way, if people like baking, go to AmericanHeritageChocolate.com. And on there, we have over 100 recipes, some of which include not only American Heritage chocolate, but also you'll find some with M&M's milk chocolate candies in there as well too. So you can get some great ideas of ways that you can bake with chocolate. No more comments.
There are many comments.
Uh-oh.
A babysat for kids whose dad works for Mars. He let me try peanut butter M&Ms back in the late 80s or early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
On a cross-country trip, someone in the car threw out my M&M's bag. And you still remember that.
Oh, talking about emergency stop. Wow.
This must have been traumatic to still remember that. My kids come running when they heard M&Ms poured into a bowl. Someone thinks the red and the green at Christmas taste better.
Yep.
Mara Little says, when I was at Yale in the mid-'80s, Frank Mars was there too, and he invited my roommates and I over to his dorm room to be beta testers on the new mint M&Ms that his family has sent. Yum.
Wonderful. That's a neat experience.
That is a neat story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's
and
great.
Then there's that old, Van Halen story of them requesting. I heard it a little differently, but this person heard it as a bowl of M&Ms without the brown on their rider, just to make sure it was being read correctly. I don't know if that's an urban legend or. The Winnie Brownell, who makes the cookies, she uses them with the Toll House and sugar cookies.
Oh, wonderful! Thank you for sharing. We appreciate that. Sounds delicious too. Okay, folks, listen. Before we end the evening, I'd love to know what was your favorite sample today. So think back on the 5 that you tried and type in the chat. Was it American Heritage chocolate? Was it Dove milk chocolate? Milky Way chocolate? Or Ethel M white chocolate? Or M&M's milk chocolate candies? So let's take a minute and see if people can type those in there, and then Geraldine's going to go ahead and read some of those out to you. And we don't want to bias people necessarily, Geraldine, but what was your favorite tonight? What did you enjoy the most?
I have to say American Heritage is my favorite. I really like all the different flavors in there. But surprisingly, I never liked white chocolate, but I do like those Ethel M's. I think most of the white chocolate I've had in my life was fake, like actual, like not the cocoa butter like this is.
Well, and I'll tell you, Geraldine, for other people who maybe like white chocolate too, go to the FLM website. They have more than just one white chocolate offering out there. So if you really want to taste some fantastic, high quality white chocolate, please go to the FLM website. think you'd be surprised at how delicious it is.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so because it's FLM, but versus other white chocolates that maybe you've had before. It's
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. What do we have there, Geraldine?
All right. So, it's a whole mix. American Heritage and Milky Way, Dove, American Heritage, Dove, Milky Way, Heritage, Dove, but their husband loves Milky Way is American Heritage Dove. And I have a couple of other questions mixed in here. One is, why are they called M&M? Is that because of the couple, the Mars couple?
Well, that's a great question, and I love to answer this one too. So remember, I mentioned before that Mr. Mars went and sought out Mr. Murray to make the
Ah,
M&Ms. That's what they decided to name their product M&M after Mr. Mars and Mr. Murray.
oh, see, I did not know that. Um, Someone asks, what's the weirdest ingredient in a Mars product you've tried but never went to market?
Wow. I probably have to plead the fifth on this. So it's really interesting. I don't try. I haven't been a beta tester, so I don't. I haven't tried any. One of the things that we do try, and maybe people have been a part of this too, is every now and then we let you vote on different flavors during different flavor campaigns. In the last flavor campaign that we had a mocha flavor as well as a cocoa flavor, and then one with a little bit of spice in it as well too. So that when I had the spicy M&M, and this is part of a flavor vote campaign, the spicy was something that I wasn't expecting in an M&M. So that was delicious. It just kind of took me by surprise initially. So yeah, and there's different things that we try that just catch people by surprise.
Great. Let's see, still people, American Heritage. Oh, someone buys it on Amazon.
Excellent. Good. Thank you.
I don't enjoy milk in my chocolate, so American Heritage is their favorite.
Excellent. And Dove also comes in a dark chocolate as well too. Don't forget. So for people who like dark chocolate, you got Dove. So if anybody has anything else, feel free to share. But if not, that really that really concludes our evening event tonight. And Geraldine, I just want to say it's been a pleasure to do this. Thank you to the audience out there for being here right before we get to Valentine's Day. Hopefully this is for some people their first Valentine's event. Maybe there's more to come for them personally, but thank you for having me. I really appreciate it and enjoyed myself. It's been fun.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, Dave, and to the team that helped us out with us from American Heritage. And thanks everyone in the audience for joining us tonight. I'm hoping you enjoy your baskets. I think this presentation was very informative and fun. You can buy American Heritage chocolate on Amazon, as was mentioned. Other products can be found on ethlm.com, mnms.com, and at your local grocery. Please be sure to check out our events and exhibit updates on rihs.org or become a member if you aren't already. We appreciate your support. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.